and welcome to this video where we're going to talk about Dutch literature. I've done a part 1 of this series early on in the year, which I'll link down below and up ahead somewhere here, so you can view that one after you finish this one. And yeah, I wanted to do a second part because one of the goals of this year for me reading was also to read a lot more literature, mostly Dutch but also other ones. And yeah, I did that. Now, with the first video, I wasn't very keen on them, so I didn't necessarily read a lot of them after that. And that's mostly because I have this whole series of like 20 Dutch literature books that are kind of considered classics, and I didn't like them that much. This time I chose to go a different route and just choose ones that sounded interesting to me, that I kind of wanted to read, and the outcome is a lot better. So without further ado, let's start with the first book. The first book that I read was My Father's War by Adriaan van Dis. I've read it a while ago, and I did sort of enjoy the book. The story itself is about, you follow the main character, and the start of the story is when one of his sisters, she passes away, and how the family deals with it, but also what kind of family secrets or family history comes up. His family, they're all born in Indonesia, and he is born in the Netherlands. Mind you, for anyone who isn't Dutch, need to know is that Indonesia used to be a Dutch colony, and that kind of shifts things. So he's also by far the youngest, he's like a latecomer. He came a lot later into the family, and the story kind of follows his discovery of the family history and the secrets, and how, but most notably, the relationship between him and his father, and how he remembers it, and how different it is to how everyone else in the family remembered the relationships, not only between him and his father, but amongst each other, and how everyone kind of has their own view on it. So in that sense, I thought I would enjoy the book, but what happens a lot is that the writer he cuts himself off, and then just starts a whole new chapter, a whole new kind of scene, and it kind of consistently develops between, is this fiction, like kind of fiction writing, to autobiographical, to journalistic writing. You just don't really know, I couldn't really get into it. And yeah, I think the biggest part about this book that I really enjoyed was just to learn more about the history with Indonesia and the Netherlands, because realistically I don't really know that much about it. And so that part was really interesting, but other than that, I wasn't a huge fan of it. It wasn't a bad read, but I really wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I think that there are much better books out there that talk about the history between the Netherlands and Indonesia. And that brings us to our second book, which is Lords of the Tea by Haasse, which is also a book or story that plays itself in Indonesia. I did really enjoy this book. I think that the metaphors and the foreshadowing is really well done. You can more easily spot them. They're not like where you have to connect dots that are so far apart that you hardly can see them. They're good to spot, and I think they're somewhat easier, and it was just a good read altogether. In the story itself, you follow Rudolf, who has just finished his university in the Netherlands and goes to Indonesia to his family who lives there, who have their own tea plantation. He arrives and assumes that he will be a major part in the tea plantation of his parents. Turns out that's not the case, and he is kind of bitter about that, and that kind of starts his journey of, starting his own tea plantation, also alienating himself a little bit from his family, just because he wants to showcase that he is ready to help run a tea plantation. And that kind of falls around, so you kind of follow mostly his life and his point of view through starting it, to his ambitions, through the relationship with his family and friends, and also love. And I think for me the story becomes more interesting when his wife gets introduced, which is Jenny. I need to check names, I'm sorry. Which is Jenny. They meet and they kind of really fall for each other. Initially her parents are like, no, you can't marry him, you can't really marry him because, he's not super successful, he's not really rich, so you can't marry him. in the meantime, they actually keep in touch and they start writing with a middleman, which is kind of where the problems start, because that one filters out a lot about how they write each other, what they write about to each other. So eventually when they do get married and Jenny moves from the city to his tea plantation, she's kind of shocked by how minimalistic and barren it is, and he is kind of unassuming about her mental problems that she kind of already has to work through. I mean, she's mentioned them in letters, but the middleman kind of filtered all of that out. And that also brings to one of the most interesting metaphors in the book for me myself, is that in the middle of the story, there is this volcano nearby that suddenly erupts, and it's kind of a surprise for everyone, and no one saw it coming, and then the whole sky is obviously, there's no light for a few days, and there's ash everywhere, which is kind of like the aftermath, and that's a really good relation into after that part, you slowly really notice her Jenny's deteriorating mental health, but when she really switches and kind of loses that battle, everyone is super surprised and like didn't see it coming. Whilst if you really read it and you see it, there's also with volcano, you can see certain, symptoms, like knows like, okay, I think it's coming, I think it's happening. So I think as someone who reads it, it doesn't seem as much of a surprise, but for the characters itself, outside of it, it's really surprising they didn't see it coming. And I think that's just one of the metaphors that was kind of easier to spot, so that just makes it easier to also recognize other things, and I think that just makes the book more enjoyable. So I think out of the books that I've read so far, I did really like this one. And also good to know is that the story is partially based on real people. So the writer Haasse, she went into archives and wrote about real people that she's seen. Obviously it's still fiction in the sense that she just did made up a little bit of the life, so there are key elements about them that are very much known, and then there are key elements that just she filled in. Basically she filled in a lot of the gaps. So yeah, definite recommend from me. The next one is Karakter by Bordewijk. I got really interested in this book. It sounded very interesting because you follow the main character, Karakter, who is the son of a very poor unwed mother, and his father is one of the biggest debt collectors and evictors in Rotterdam, which is a Dutch city, and who thrives off of evicting people, and he's kind of very notoriously known for that, and kind of has a bad name and bad reputation when it comes to stuff like that. And the main character, so the son, wants to become a lawyer. And you kind of follow him in his sort of like, I think mostly teen years, up until later in adulthood, how he became a lawyer, how he becomes one, what he needs to do, what he starts giving up, and all of that. And I gotta admit, I wasn't a huge fan of it. It was, for me, a very typical Dutch literary novel, in the sense that it's very slow paced, sort of slice of life, like it just tells you about everyday life, and a lot of family issues. And I would love to be able to specify where it's mommy issues or daddy issues, but this main character just has both. So bad. Like really bad. And I think it's also one of the main, storylines or parts about this book, is that it's like his nature versus nurture, where at the beginning of the book he doesn't want to be like his mom, he doesn't want to be like his dad, who are both very hard-headed, ambitious people who very much keep everything to themselves. And he's like, I don't want to be that person, I don't want to be this hard-headed, I want to have people around me. And I think, okay, so like I said, nature versus nurture, and he wants to not be like his parents. And throughout the book you kind of do notice that, although that's his intention initially, throughout the books and throughout his life, he starts looking more and more like his parents. Sometimes very deliberate choices, sometimes just, going through life, and it kind of creeps into his character and who he becomes as a person. So in that sense, it's kind of interesting. So that's why I'm kind of neutral on the book. I get it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone. And the last one, which is by far my favorite and smallest for people who found that very interesting, it's Out of Mind by Bernlef. And I love this. I thought it was so well done. It was so well written. Just, yes, thank you. What is the story? The main character, you follow him, how he has very dementia, like really fastly happens. So it's not a slow process, but it's a very fast process, which is more uncommon, obviously. Usually when people get dementia, it's a very slow process that takes years. For him, it goes really fast, but it's very interesting to see how, because it's from the point of view of the main character who gets the dementia, how he slowly, like, it starts off with very small things about just forgetting to bring the wood inside for a fire, to, forgetting that he is with a dog, and then it just gets from, bad to worse, like the worst, where he thinks he needs to go to work when he really doesn't, and he ends up, and you also kind of get a taste about what kind of reaction it brings to the people around him, like for example his wife, who at certain points starts crying really bad because of what's happening, and he just kind of doesn't really realize, like part of him recognizes that he forgets too much and it isn't really okay, but at the other time, but then like a few seconds later he just totally forgot about it. I think like, I'm healthy, I feel good physically, like there's nothing going on. And to kind of see that softly play out, and I think also again when it comes to like metaphors or stuff like that, they're consistent things that are very important, but they're constantly repeated again throughout the story, so it's easier to spot, which just makes it easier for anyone who needs to do research literature for school, that it will easier to grasp onto which metaphors are important. So yeah, but I really love this one. I think I read it in a day. You can read it in a day. It is a little over 100 pages, and I did really enjoy it. And you do have to sit for it a little bit, but sit yourself a lot of attention, afternoon, evening, and you've got it. But yeah, definitely this is one that I would very highly recommend people to read, especially if you know someone who has dementia or amnesia or anything, like that in your family or close by. Then this will hopefully help you understand a little more. And I think that's what I also love about books, when they showcase something that I'm not really familiar with, in a sense that I've experienced it, and to kind of see what that does for people or what it means. Just really does a lot. So yeah, Out of Mind by Bernlef, highly recommend. And that's also the end. Those are the 4 books that I've recently read, so it's not like a super long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed and that it kind of helped you out. If you want me to do another part, just let me know. And also like and subscribe to my channel and comment if you want me to do it on, or which book specifically, because that also really helps, and then I'll just check those out as well. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys again soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye! Next time on this channel, will she be able to meet her reading goal, the one she's laughably behind? Take that book in the background, for example. Yeah, the really big one. She's been carrying around for 3 months, as if she's gonna finish it this year. Will she? Or has she just drag it along to January?